Okay, so we're here today for the second session of MedWorld Roundup. First time for both Daniel here and for me as well. And I've got MedWorld advisors with me, or Daniel would have them with him, depending on who's doing this. And it's a mergers and acquisitions advisory firm that specializes in medical devices, biotech, and medtech. And today, I have the pleasure of having Daniel Sheppard here, which is the managing director. How are you? Welcome.
I'm doing great, Lynn. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Very good. My pleasure. How's San Fran?
It's getting warmer by the day. Enjoying this nice sunshine we have.
I can imagine. That's great. That's great. Um, okay, so today we are going to talk about building your deal team, which is a very important topic because it will impact how successful an exit is, and it will impact the valuations, it will impact a lot of things. So maybe we can kick off and talk a little bit about the deal team and what it consists of from a sell side perspective.
Sure. Starting with, a sales side deal team is a group of, just a group of expert advisors that a business owner will put together in order to market and sell their business to buyers, which honestly can often be a daunting task for a lot of business owners, as most will most likely only do it once or twice in their lifetime. Which is why it's really important to try to put together a really quality team on your sales side deal team to have as much success as possible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's that's the tricky bit, right? When it doesn't happen so often, it's there's no intuitive to
Well,
it.
and you know that when the business owner has built their company to a successful place because they've focused on building a quality team around them that can help to grow the business. It's the same thing when you're trying to sell the business. You want to put together a quality team that can market and sell your business to the market and so that you can receive the best value possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Yeah. And who should be on it, would you say? And in a nutshell, what do they do?
Yeah, no, good question. I think an easy way to think about that is the type of roles you'll need to cover in an M&A process. And I think one of the first things you should think about is getting your finances in order. And it's really important to have a really good accountant, somebody that can really have your books in order. One of the things every company is going to go through when they sell their company is a quality of earnings report. So you want to make sure you have your books in order. I think we've seen it before in a process we've run with a client, so where our client had probably overconfidence in the account that they had previously had. And so when we got to the quality of earnings report with the buyer, the buyer felt like they were putting together the books all over again. And ultimately that caused the deal to fall apart. So it's really important that you have that in place. And another thing to think about with your accountant is typically deals are valued on EBITDA multiples. So for every dollar in EBITDA that you have, that's going to increase the value of your company by your multiple, which is often 8 to 12x. So every dollar of EBITDA is going to be another $10 of value. Secondly, I think you also want to make sure you have a really quality M&A advisor. You want somebody that has relationships with buyers, really has a pulse on the market, understands what valuations are going for, and can really manage the process for you from start to finish, because it's a full-time job to manage a sell side process. I think you're also going to want a really good transaction lawyer. I think that's something that can be often overlooked in a process, because you want somebody that's experienced in doing transactions in the industry you're in. I think that's really important to understand the different clauses and the different types of terminologies that are going to be in the purchase agreement. We've also had a client that had a friendly relationship with a lawyer that they brought in to be their transaction lawyer, but he didn't have any experience doing transactions in the industry that we're in within healthcare. And ultimately, some of the the flags that he raised, that they were unable to work through and unable to get that deal consummated, even though we were able to bring our client more than double the value that they had hoped to receive on the market. So I'd say those are the three most important roles: an accountant, an M&A advisor, and a good transaction lawyer. And I think one last thing I'd probably say is an underlooked member of the deal team can be the upper management of the company. I think, a business owner has put together a really quality team, and a buyer wants to know what they're buying. And often once you get further along in the process, you're going to have more exposure to upper management so that the buyer understands, who's going to be operating the company after a transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are good points. And with the accounting and all the financial documentations, that's just so important. And preferably having someone external to review and make sure that this is actually what the seller is saying, even though it doesn't have to be that the seller is manipulating it. But that like external review is really good to have. And for the 8 to 10 times multiple that we're talking about here, that's specific to the healthcare industry. I just want to add that because it differs so much between different industries, and in our audience, it's quite broad. And I think also what you mentioned about having a good M&A advisor, that is just so important, because that is the person that will see through the process from start to finish and help with getting all the people on board, having the right people on board, making sure the timeline is right, and you're pushing forward, which is a tough task. And I would also say with a transaction lawyer, and having a good transaction lawyer with experience is really important, but also having a transaction lawyer that is experienced and will push the deal forward and not be a showstopper.
Absolutely.
Is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, there can often be a perceived conflict of interest with transaction lawyers because they get paid by the hour. So you want to make sure you have a good relationship with your lawyer, and we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah, and also not just the conflict of interest, also the mindset, right? The mindset of a lawyer is naturally to find the flaws and go into depth and fix those flaws. In a deal
Absolutely. They want to
transaction,
protect your best interests, and it's about finding
exactly.
that middle ground compromise. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to the intermediary role and the direction of seeing the deal through to a successful transaction, could you talk a little bit about that?
About the intermediary's role?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I think there's a lot of value that an intermediary brings. I think one of the first most important things that they will do is in collaboration with the seller. The intermediary or your M&A advisor will help to create a value proposition based upon the experience that they've drawn from previous processes for previous companies they've sold, and also because they should have a pulse on the market. They should be having discussions with different buyers, different firms or companies or strategics often, so that they understand what buyers are looking for and what they're willing to pay. So in preparation for launching a process, a good M&A advisor will help to set up your value proposition and your story so that when you enter a process and start engaging with buyers, it's going to be really compelling to try to attract as many of them as possible. And I think the second really important thing that an M&A advisor should bring to the table is their Rolodex, so to speak. And it might be an outdated term these days, but I think for most processes that we run with our clients, there are hundreds of buyers that are looking at those deals that we bring to the market. It takes a lot of work and effort to know who each of these firms are and to engage with them each in a way that they will want to engage in or enter the process and learn more about the company, so that you can have as many bidders as possible. And I think, with that, I think continuing through the process, your M&A advisor is going to project manage in a way the process and manage all those buyers, manage them through all of their diligence requests, their the request for documents and financial records, manage buyers' expectations, and also push them in the right way towards your bid date or your expectation to receive offers, so that you're kind of pitting them against each other to try to create a nice competitive bidding process, which will ultimately drive up the value for the seller's company.
Yeah. And touching on that, that's a very important aspect of it, right? The timeline. Um, when would you say a seller should start building out their deal team?
Well, I think it's really never too early to start thinking about building out your deal team. I think it can be a daunting task, but you're going to be working with your deal team for months. Some processes can go as long as 12 to 18 months. Some can be done a lot quicker in about 6 months, but you will be working with your deal team for quite a few months. And there's a lot of trust and communication that needs to be built amongst your deal team. So why wouldn't you want a little bit kind of a advanced effort to try to vet some of these different members that could be on your deal team, get to know them, and have a good understanding of who you would be working with in those situations, and also connecting with them earlier than you are early in the process when you start thinking about an exit will also give them the opportunity to provide different opinions about how you can set your company up for the best possible success in a transaction.
Yeah, I think that last point that you touched on is it's a really important one, because sometimes, or in some cases, there are some things that need to be fixed
Mm-hmm.
in order to get the highest valuation at the end when you're actually selling.
Right.
Um, and having that extra amount of time will just, reduce the amount of stress and increase the success at the end. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And could you give us an example where the seller's deal team has contributed to the success of a transaction?
Absolutely. I can give you two. I think one that's kind of really fun to talk about is actually back in 2020 we had engaged with a new client who was actually had a proprietary ventilator product. So he had a ventilator portfolio, and we engaged with him just before kind of COVID stops the world, and then as kind of people were starting to understand COVID in the beginning stages, ventilators became a product that doctors and nurses really felt like could be helpful towards those patients. So we reached out to our contact at GE Healthcare at the time, and were able to really get discussions going right away, because GE Healthcare was looking for a different ventilator that they could bring to their customers so that they could help try to save as many lives as possible. And we were able to connect our client with GE Healthcare, and ultimately help to transact on a deal within 12 days, which is a record for us. That was ultimately a partnership between our client, GE Healthcare, and Ford to manufacture a lot of these life-saving ventilators. So that's a deal that we're really proud to be a part of, and we really feel like we helped to bring all those people to the table. I'd say another example is also during COVID, a different company that we worked with, had a offer in place and was going through diligence, doing that fun quality of earnings we were just talking about earlier here, Lynn. And then COVID happened, and of course, I think as was the case with a lot of deals out there, they decided to pause and they wanted to see what was going to shake out before they decided to write the check for that company. And so over the course of 3 months, we really led the process of keeping the relationship together, keeping the buyer and seller together, along with every member of the deal team, keeping the lines of communication open, providing timely updates, and really making sure that we could keep that deal together, and ultimately did close that deal once some of the earlier stages of the COVID pandemic were kind of worked through. So I'd say those are two examples where I think the seller's deal team really helped to put those deals together.
Yeah, great, lovely to hear, and glad to hear about some successful ones during or in the beginning of the pandemic. There, that was tough times.
It was, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're coming to an end here. Lovely. Thank you so much for your insights and for sharing, Daniel. If someone wants to get in touch with you, where should they reach out?
Yeah, you can contact me at MedWorld Advisors. My direct email is daniel@medworldadvisors.com. And I'd welcome any sort of conversation or any questions that you may have about what a process could look like. Happy to always have an introductory call and kind of let you know what my experience or what we're seeing on the market and help point you in the right direction.
Okay, super, lovely. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks for having me, Lynn.
My pleasure.